thank you very much everybody for joining us. We're on the end of the first block of our final day of Lytham International 2025. Just watched another selection of absolutely amazing films. And joining me here on the stage to talk about their work is a couple of incredible filmmakers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're the most important. So, who are you? What have you showcased here today?
My name's Sunny Bahia. I was the writer-director of Terminal, the gambling addiction book.
I'm Jim Murphy. I directed and edited the documentary called Milk and a Dog about Phil Rochester.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. It's always interesting trying to find out a little bit about the inspiration behind these films and why you decided that you wanted to make them, because very, very specific topics for both of you in very different ways. How about for you, Sunny? What was the passion behind this? Where did the inspiration come from?
Well, the story is kind of a personal story. I went through pretty much what the character went through. Around about 15 years ago, I kind of casually went into a betting shop, placed a bet, and then saw these machines light up. They were pretty new back then. They're called fixed odds betting terminals. And I just kind of got hooked into it. I was going through other stuff in my life at the time, and it became a kind of distraction for me, and I got caught in that kind of addiction, and for about 4 to 5 years it just consumed me. And so obviously then got myself recovered, went to Gamblers Anonymous for a few years, and then it got to a time where I felt like I wanted to tell that story. I had kind of a young son who I saw playing computer games and having similar kind of adrenaline rushes, and I just feel it's something that's kind of quite a hidden disease happening, especially in the UK, but all over the world as well, and with online gambling on your phones and everything. So I was just keen to kind of get my story across, but also kind of make a bit more awareness as well to the subject matter.
How did it feel that eventually? Yes, absolutely. How did it feel then when you actually started to make the films? The idea and the passion behind it is quite clear, but was it difficult, having to kind of relive those experiences to put them on camera for you, or was it more of a cathartic experience?
I'd say a bit of both, really. I think the lead actor, Jazz, spent a lot of time. We had a lot of conversations where he wanted to find out more about what it was like and what I went through. I think those were quite, it was like therapy all over again. So that was quite, because it's been quite a few, good 10, 15 years since I last gambled, so it's quite, when he was asking those experiences, it was coming back to that was quite difficult. But actually then seeing it when we were actually on shooting it and editing it, I think that was more cathartic, and it was quite nice to kind of almost go full circle with my story.
So let's quickly have a chat about Milking the Dog then as well. What was the inspiration for that? How did this come about? What an interesting character you found.
Well, quite simply, I'm just very interested in performance as a topic, and Milk and the Dog is a film about a stand-up comedian who isn't always entirely successful at being a stand-up comedian, and I think the idea of rejection being quite a universal thing everyone has to deal with, because it's a job interview, or if you do film or anything in the creative world, you get used to rejection. It's just a part of that you accept. But I think stand-up, I can't really think of a sort of a creative a way to express yourself creatively where you get more direct and instant and brutal feedback. So I was quite interested in following someone who seems to do it regardless of the reception that he gets, because it's my worst nightmare to do something like that, and a lot of people. So I think it's incredible anyone can do that, but especially when you're sort of, because you're either met by silence or heckling, right? And when you do stuff like film, if you can sort of get away with either you might not know about it, or people make a comment well, some of the music is interesting, but it's not quite, you can sort of get away with it a bit more. So it was sort of exploring that idea.
And where did Phil come from? Biologically we've probably got some ideas, but for your film, how did you find him? How did that relationship come about?
Well, we were shooting in university a different project that was similar to this, but it didn't quite work out. But we were grabbing B-roll of that comedy club specifically, and the opening act that you see of Phil was shot like in 2018, so like 6 or 7 years ago now. And I remember it was the shortest. It was like a gong show, right? So you go up and the audience vote, and he was the quickest to get voted off. And I was like, oh, let's grab a quick interview with him because we just need a sound bite to say, oh, that was brutal, or whatever. And he totally just ignored all of my questions and went on this like long story about a dog outside of a pub. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, that would be interesting to revisit him at some point. And then sort of post-COVID, when clubs stopped opening up again, we started shooting the documentary. Yeah.
He's presumably seen the film.
Yeah.
What are his thoughts on it?
He likes it. He likes it. That was the scariest part. I sent it to him and I had like 3 missed calls, and then I got a text saying he liked it, but his plan was originally to call me up, and I was really angry and pissed off. So I'm glad I didn't take that phone call because that would have been horrific. But he seems fairly happy. I think his wife has seen it too, Marion. Yeah, it's an interesting one because we told him exactly what we wanted to do with it, which is like why you do this, what's normal, because he acknowledges it doesn't always go well. So yeah, luckily he was on board with the whole thing, so it wasn't like a shock.
Let's go back to you, Sunny. I think the overall visual style of what you managed to create is both engaging and quite unique, doing the whole thing from the perspective of the machine. And I think you do a really solid job of actually characterising the machine as well as the lead character. How difficult was that process? Was that something you always wanted to try and achieve, the machine's own identity? Can you give a little insight into that?
Yeah, it took quite a few years to figure out how I was going to tell this story. So a lot of versions before, just a simple kind of domestic drama. You see him go home and have interactions with his work and stuff, and just I don't know, it just never kind of excited me too much going down that route. So I don't know what it was. Maybe I was watching a bit of 2001 Stanley Kubrick and saw how I think there was one moment where I just thought actually it'd be a lot more interesting to keep it all from the machine's point of view. And also I think fellow short film makers will probably know when you try to make a short film, you're trying to be practical as well, instead of having like multiple locations. So I actually thought it'd work on many reasons, and then also wanted to tap into how it feels when you're with the machine, the relationship with the machine, and the claustrophobic nature, and almost like they're a kind of a third person in your relationship as well. So I mean, once I kind of knew that I was going to shoot from that point of view, then everything kind of started to fall into place. But then obviously the challenge comes in the edit of it to try to keep that interesting, because you can't, have the normal tricks of cutting away and cutting to a close-up or a different shot. So so I think once we knew that, I think the name of the film is called Terminal, and even though we're following this character story, I think at the end, as you see all the different characters who have played the machine, I think in the end it was really key to, it is the kind of machine story rather than his story, because the machine is a metaphor for gambling companies, betting companies. It doesn't really care who you are, it just stays there, seduces you, and once it's done with you, it kind of spits you out, and it kind of moves on to the next one, or is multiple. So yeah, I think that was quite an important thing to make sure that it was, in the end, it's the machine story rather than Jazz's character.
I'm going to open it up into the audience, so if anybody's got a question that you'd like to ask either of our filmmakers, please just pop your hand up and I will come over.
Questions for Joe. I think it was really clear that you guys ended up spending quite a lot of time building quite this great relationship with Phil. And I was just wondering whether throughout the process you wanted more to present it sort of detached and more maybe objective, or whether you came to want to represent him as you guys saw him and as you came to know him.
Well, that's a really interesting question. With the film, obviously our first impression of Phil is what you would have seen, it's what the live audience would have seen, which is at first quite alienating, right, and jarring, because you're like, who is this guy? Well, especially in the film, what's it? And then hopefully as you get to know him, you warm up to him, and suddenly his jokes and comedy starts to become more funny because you know him and understand him. And that was definitely the process, like for me going in. There's like a thing when you get like an interesting subject for a documentary, you know, and then it wasn't really until we started making it, and he's also just like a really lovely, nice person, and I didn't know about his wife Mariam, and I think that's really endearing, because also you might see a lot of his stand-up is like quite political, and it's also quite alienating to people, because he did a whole stand-up bit where he's talking about him and his wife were affected by the government introduced this thing where Mariam, his wife, who has a brain tumour and can't work, was seen as fit for work, so a lot of their benefits got taken away from them. He was really annoyed by that, but obviously what the audience sees without the context we have is a guy that just gets up and he's making jokes about disability, and a lot of people aren't sure why he's doing that. So that's quite painful. So yeah, I think Phil's a really nice person, and like the main focus of this film, from making it from the start, was like not to be explored, because it would have been really boring, right, if it was just a sequence of like fringe comedy of gigs not going well, and quite exploitative. So it was like wanting to tell Phil's story, and like with the stand-up as a backdrop. But yeah, definitely by the time we got to finishing it, like I felt like a responsibility to Phil, so people watch it and like him, right? Because I like him and I think he's a nice guy. So yeah, definitely. And we still keep in contact as well.
Unfortunately, we run out of time, so we're going to have to cut things a little bit short on that one. I'd just like to finish with the same question that we like to ask all the filmmakers. There's always up-and-coming filmmakers in the audience, people just starting out on their journey in film. If you could give those people one piece of advice and sum it up just in 1 or 2 sentences, what would it be?
It's a hard one. Well, prepare to kind of sacrifice a lot of your spare time, but I think my main advice is one, because you always kind of stall it, you always try to look at, I'll do it, I'm going to do it next week, or get to the casting, and I think just kind of, go fully in and just embrace it completely, and then connect with as many like-minded people as possible, because without having a network of people, everyone on there kind of works for free, camera companies, people gave the equipment, hired it out, so just make loads of connections, like-minded independent filmmakers from all the different disciplines, and then kind of work together, and then that's kind of the best way, and then you get a great kind of feeling at the end of it as well. Just connect and commit.
Yeah, I think spare time thing is definitely true, but also like I think advice that I heard is like the best is, and it almost sounds not aspirational, but make stuff within your means, like especially your film as well, it's very story first, right, and then you build the superficial stuff around that. So we shot this doc on like a C100, which is like a very cheap, accessible camera now, but as a result of that, like we just made it because we wanted to make it, and going to a few festivals has just given us some confidence, and now to spend a bit more money on upgrading kit and stuff. So like definitely if you have an idea for a story, like focus on that, and like just anything within your means to make it, instead of worrying about making something really grand and great from the get-go. Is like story and scale up, I guess.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all your answers to our wonderful questions. Our filmmakers, everybody. Thank you.